Boring history for sleep, what ancient Ethiopians packed for a desert trip. Hey guys, tonight we're slipping way back into the dusty stillness of ancient northeastern Africa. The sun is already glaring down, and you're standing in the middle of a desert outpost, blinking at a camel that looks equally unimpressed. The ground crunches beneath your feet, not with sand but with sun-baked gravel. And all around you, people are loading up for a long, slow journey across one of the harshest places on Earth. Welcome to the kind of trip where comfort is optional, survival is negotiable, and hydration is a full-time job. You, my friend, are preparing for a desert caravan journey through the heart of what we now call Ethiopia, though to you, it's simply home. And this isn't just any journey, it's the real deal. High stakes, low amenities, and exactly 0 rest stops. It's no GPS, no fast food, not even a terribly helpful map. You'll be depending on your gear, your group, and whatever scraps of ancient know-how you packed into that head of yours. Oh, and spoiler, you probably won't survive this if you forget the water jugs. Just saying. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far this sleepy caravan travels. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're up before dawn, but the heat doesn't care. It's already awake. The caravan leader, a leathery old guy with a nose that could slice granite, waves you toward your pack pile, responsible for exactly 3 things: not slowing everyone down, not dying, and not breaking your load animal's spirit with bad vibes. Which, according to the caravan rules, includes excessive whining. You nod solemnly and try not to cough on your own excitement. The desert crossing isn't a spontaneous trip. It's been planned for weeks, maybe months. Ancient Ethiopians, especially those from the Aksumite civilization, weren't just wandering around aimlessly. This was trade, travel, diplomacy, and survival all rolled into one. Historians still argue whether these journeys were mostly economic or spiritual. But one thing's for sure, you don't leave home unless you got serious business on the other side. So you start packing, slowly, methodically, because packing fast in this heat is how you forget something dumb. Like your water ration or the only rope that doesn't disintegrate when it gets too dry. Around you, others are doing the same, strapping bundles with leather cords, arguing over which camel is less cursed, and muttering prayers into the dust. You've already double-checked your basic gear, food, water, shelter check, but you also know the real game is in the small stuff. The unexpected stuff. That tiny needle your aunt insisted you bring just in case. The brittle parchment with a half-faded root drawn in red ochre. And of course, your fire-starting kit, tucked inside a horn container that smells faintly of goat and stronger of optimism. The camels, yes. They have names, and no, they don't like you are being loaded in careful order. Heaviest gear on the strongest beasts. Trade goods wrapped in woven mats, stacked like overstuffed burritos on their sides. A few people have donkeys, and one guy shows up late with a literal ox dragging a wooden sled.
Ow.
Nobody says anything, but there's some real judgment in the air. You've chosen your travel cloak wisely. It's made of tight woven cotton, bleached bone white by the sun, designed to reflect as much heat as possible. Beneath that, layers, a soft linen tunic, some impressively durable sandals, and a belt with just enough little pouches to make you look like someone who knows what they are redoing. You don't, of course, but appearances matter. A fringe detail is just for fun. Your neighbor is packing a small ceramic jar of fermented ostrich egg. He swears it keeps away dessert spirits. You're not buying it, but you also want to offend anyone with the power to curse your camel-esque digestion. Just before departure, there's a pause. Quiet moment while the caravan leader raises a carved staff toward the rising sun. He murmurs something in Ge'ez, the ancient liturgical tongue of Ethiopia, still echoed today in church rituals. It's half blessing, half weather forecast. You don't understand all of it, but you catch the word for wind and make a note to tighten your head wrap later. Then it's go time. The caravan moves slowly at first, animals adjusting, feet crunching, dust kicking up like little ghosts behind every step. You walk alongside your beast. Everyone does. Riding is saved for the injured, the elderly, or those with serious favor. You've got none of those credentials, so you trudge. Within an hour, the heat goes from mildly rude to utterly disrespectful. The world turns golden and white, like it's been sandblasted of all detail. You can't tell how far you've gone, only that the village has vanished behind you, and the only thing ahead is a blurry, shimmering nothing. But still, you move forward. You remember a story told to you as a child about a desert traveler who forgot to pack a second sandal and had to limp across sharp rocks for 3 days, eventually trading his own earring for a new pair from a group of passing traders. You pat your sandals like they're priceless heirlooms. That's the thing. Every little item matters, even the odd ones. A crooked walking stick, a dried gourd that supposedly whistles when danger's near, a folded piece of parchment with an ancestor's name inked in palm ash. These objects aren't just talismans, they're anchors. When the desert starts to blur your senses and steal your memory, these bits of home keep you tethered. You're already sweating through everything, and the sun hasn't even hit its peak. But this is the easy part. The real challenge? It comes when the heat turns your brain to papyrus soup, and every packed item becomes either a blessing or a very bad joke. You didn't think about water until you started to feel like your teeth were turning into sandstone. It hits fast. Out here one moment, you're just a little thirsty. And the next, your tongue feels like a dried fig stuck to the roof of your mouth. So you reach back, carefully untying the goatskin slung over your shoulder. Let's be honest, it smells bad. There's no polite way to say it. The goatskin, known as a jerabah, has been cleaned technically. But ancient Ethiopian cleaning methods didn't involve scented detergent or lemon-fresh anything, more like rinsed in stream water and blessed by an elder who sneezed near it once. Still, it works. You tip it up, feeling the lukewarm water slosh into your mouth. Not refreshing exactly, but deeply necessary. You only get so much of this per day. You'll lose it, and you become a lesson in what not to do. Water transport was, and still is, the centerpiece of desert survival. The ancient Ethiopians understood this better than anyone. You aren't carrying anything as fragile as ceramic pots those are, packed onto the camels wrapped in padded straw baskets. Instead, you've got skins. Sometimes from goats, sometimes from cows, occasionally even from hippos. If you're feeling fancy and have a contact near a river, historians still argue whether these skins were waterproofed with tree sap or a kind of boiled resin. But one thing's agreed upon, they were surprisingly durable. Your goatskin, despite its odor, has survived 3 trips already. You pat it affectionately, like it's a gross but loyal friend. Nearby, one of the younger travelers is struggling to tie a ceramic jar into his saddle harness. It's bulbous, heavy, and, unfortunately, cracking. Someone yells to just drink it now and ditch the pot. He doesn't listen. 10 minutes later, there's a loud crunch and the jar shatters. The camel is unimpressed. The boy is devastated. You try not to laugh. Too hard. The elder walking beside you is a little more traditional. He prefers to keep his water in tightly woven baskets lined with beeswax. The water tastes faintly of honey and regret, but he swears it keeps cooler that way. You consider trading your goatskin for a beeswax pouch until you remember. You have absolutely nothing to offer except your fire-starting horn and a half-smashed date cake. Caravan water planning ISNT, just about how much you carry at S where you expect to refill. And that's where the real trust comes in. The leader insists there's a spring halfway through this stretch, nestled beneath a rock shaped like a crouching lion with indigestion. You'll believe it when you see it. For now, you ration. And by ration, I mean you're doing mental math every few minutes. If I drink 3 sips now, I can probably hold off until the sun hits that suspicious cactus again. Except there are no cacti. It's just stones that look like plants when you start to get thirsty enough. Every caravan has a water rotation system. Morning sips, midday splash if you're lucky. Night gulps. The most experienced travelers wrap their containers in wet cloth and hang them in the breeze to cool the water through evaporation. You tried it once. The cloth dried out faster than your patience. There's also a quirky tradition among some traders. If someone drops their water skin, they must carry a rock in their bag until the next spring. Not for punishment, but as a reminder that every drop is earned. You watch a man ahead of you stumble and drop his pouch. He doesn't argue, just sighs, picks up a rock, and mutters something that sounds like, "Next time I'm staying home." You shift your pack, the strap sticking to your sweaty shoulder, your backup water pouch, a smaller one, shaped like a weird Melanese, sloshing faintly. You're not supposed to touch it unless you really need it. It's like the sky just swallowed the sun and we're lost kind of need. For now, you leave it be. And then there's the weird stuff. You pass a woman carrying what looks like a sealed gourd, painted with strange red markings. She claims it's spirit water blessed by a Highland monk and mixed with desert herbs. It's not for drinking, mind you, just for listening. When she shakes it, it sloshes in a way that's oddly soothing. You find yourself asking to hold it for a bit, and when she agrees, you feel like you're cradling a piece of someone's dream. Water isn't just hydration out here. It's peace. It's protection. It's memory. You remember stories of water shamans, desert mystics, who could find underground streams just by pressing their ear to the sand. Historians still debate whether this was a real skill or a mix of luck and very specific geology, but people swore by them. The kind of person who could sniff the air and tell you which direction would kill you slower. The midday heat hits like a slap wrapped in velvet. Your eyes sting. The horizon ripples. Even the camels stop grumbling, too hot to complain. You shuffle forward, eyeing every shadow for signs of a mirage. That dark patch up ahead, just more rock. The fluttering in the distance, probably someone's head wrap flapping. But eventually the call goes out. Stop. Water. It's not a spring. Just a deep pit dug by someone long ago, covered with dry brush and a heavy stone lid. Inside is a clay-lined hole holding what can loosely be called water. It smells mineral. Why? Possibly haunted. But you drink it anyway, careful not to swallow too fast. Later that evening, you sit beside your camel, watching the stars pierce the sky like needles in black velvet. You sip from your goatskin again, the water now warm and tasting faintly of dust and old stories. But it's there. It's yours. And tomorrow, you'll fill it again if you find that lion-shaped rock. You shift your weight, sigh, and whisper a little thank you to the goatskin that saved your life at least twice today. You still think it smells like regret, but maybe that's part of the charm. The next morning, before the sun claws its way above the horizon, you're already chewing something that could generously be called food. It's dry, grayish, and tastes a little like sorrowbutt. It fills your stomach without complaining. Welcome to the thrilling culinary world of ancient desert travel cuisine. You're eating kisra, or something like it, a tough, folded flatbread made from fermented teff or barley. It's dense, chewy, and built to survive a sandstorm. You dunk it briefly into a clay bowl of what might be lentil paste, might be pulverized peas, or might be whatever was left over 3 days ago. You don't ask. Asking leads to knowledge, and knowledge leads to regret. Grain was everything for travelers like you. The ancient Ethiopians were master agriculturalists, cultivating hardy grains like barley, sorghum, and teff and highland terraces that are still in use today. These grains traveled surprisingly well. You've got a small sack of pre-cooked porridge mix tucked into your saddlebag, a mix of crushed grains, dried herbs, and salt. Add water, stir with something stick-shaped, and you've got dinner. You also have a small jar of dabo kolotini, crunchy cubes of roasted barley dough. Think trail mix without the joy. Still, they're easy to eat on the move and hard to crush. Even the camels stepping on your pack wouldn't ruin these. Food preservation wasn't optional out here. Heat could ruin a good meal in minutes. That's why everything you've packed is either dry, fermented, or salted within an inch of its life. You bite into a hunk of dried meat. It's goat, or maybe lamb, or desert squirrel. You stop wondering and just chew. You remember hearing your uncle say that real traders travel with burba, powdered spice mix that includes chili, garlic, ginger, and magic. Okay, not actual magic, but it might as well be. You pinch some into your porridge and immediately sneeze. Worth it, round you. Others are unpacking their morning rations. One traveler pulls out what looks like a rock, then scrapes it with a knife, until powder falls into his bowl. It's dehydrated honey cake. Sort of. He claims it was blessed by a nun from the Tigray Highlands. It tastes like sweet dust, and maybe regret, but he looks happy enough. There's always someone who brings way too much. One noble-looking guy near the back of the caravan has an actual bronze kettle and insists on boiling everything, including his water and wants a spoon. You tried asking why, just said it's the principle, and then tripped over his spice satchel. He's now referred to as the gourmet. Still, there's a logic to packing like this. You don't know when you'll next have firewood or the time to stop, so anything edible straight from the bag is gold, and if it doubles as trade goods, even better. You've already swapped a strip of smoked antelope for a fistful of candied nuts. Probably acacia seed, maybe with honey, maybe with tree sap. You decided not to ask. Historians still argue whether travelers like you cooked much along the route or just relied on pre-prepared foods, but evidence suggests both. Portable stoves made from clay and fitted with charcoal trays have been found in ruins near trade paths, suggesting that some folks didn't mind dragging a whole kitchen across the dunes. You, however, are not one of those people. Your cooking kit consists of a flint striker, a metal skewer, a pot so dented it might qualify as an abstract sculpture, and an old wooden spoon your mother made you swear never to lose. You cherish it like a relic. Last night, someone tried to borrow it and nearly got smacked with a sandal. Fair is fair. But food wasn't just fuel, it was also diplomacy. A shared meal could seal a trade deal, calm tensions, or save your life if you stumbled into the wrong village and needed to prove you weren't a raider. You keep a few extra snacks tucked away for exactly that kind of moment. Emergency diplomacy, biscuits, if you will. You also have a gourd of tella, a kind of grain-based beer, very weak and very cloudy. It tastes like something that should still be fermenting, but it's surprisingly good for your nerves. You sip it sparingly. Out here at Tipsy Traveler is just hyena bait. And then there's the weird stuff because, of course there is. One man claims he only eats food that's been blessed by singing. Every morning he hums into his pouch of grain before cooking. You tried humming at your barley? It didn't improve the taste, but it made you feel weirdly bonded to it. Another woman swears by chewing dry coffee berries. It's not brewed, just chewed. It gives her energy and scares the camels. You tried it once and couldn't sleep for 2 days. She just winks at you and says, "Strong minds eat strong beans." You're not sure if that's wisdom or a threat. You shuffle your pack to make room for your next snack and wince as something pokes your side. It's a wrapped bundle of injera, still faintly moist thanks to being buried in layers of banana leaves. You forgot you packed that. It's a little sour now, but still edible. Probably you break off a piece and eat it with dignity, sort of. As the day stretches on and the sun reasserts its cruel personality, you find that eating becomes more of a strategy than a pleasure. Little bits here and there, a date or two, a salted seed pod, is anything to keep the stomach from growling and the mind from drifting. You chew, you swallow, you walk. That's life. Food is function out here. Comfort, if you're lucky. And survival. Always. Tonight, when the caravan pauses again, you'll try to cook something warm, a porridge, maybe. If you can find a few sticks and not get chased off by territorial fire ants. But for now, your little pouch of travel bread, grain dust, and mystery snacks will do just fine. You glance at your spoon again. Still there? Good. Your camel smells like fermented sadness and old hay, but you're deeply attached to him. You didn't choose each other exactly, you were assigned, but in this part of the world, partnerships forged by necessity often outlast love at first sight. This is your camel, tall, grumpy, slightly cross-eyed. His name is either Abadullah or Spitzalat, depending on whom you ask. You stick with Abadullah? Sounds more respectful. Camels are the unsung engines of ancient Ethiopian desert caravans. Dromedaries, to be precise, the one-humped models. It's better suited for heat, lighter on the sand, and with that uncanny ability to look insulted even when they're being fed. Abadullah has carried your food, water, sleeping mat, and a small bundle of resin wrapped in cloth for trade. He's also stepped on your foot 3 times. You walk beside him during the cooler hours, ride him only when absolutely necessary because despite what Hollywood suggests, camel riding is less majestic float across the sands and more saddle wedgy with a side of back pain. You've learned to hold on with your knees, lean forward at takeoff, and pray your water skin doesn't pop on landing. Every caravan has a few kinds of camels. The elite ones, sleek, fast, raised in the southern highlands can outrun a storm. They're used for scouting and message runs.
Ah!
Yours is built like an overstuffed cabinet, but he's steady. Doesn't spook easily. Doesn't stop unless you say so, or unless he spots something suspicious like a rock. Historians still argue whether camel gear varied much between regions, or if certain saddle styles were passed between cultures along the trade routes. What's clear is you've got a wooden saddle frame padded with woven grass, and wrapped in old goat hide. You adjusted it once. Never again. It's nearly dislocated something. Your saddlebags are lopsided. You've tried fixing them. So has everyone else. The camel has accepted this. You have not. The lopsidedness has become a metaphor for the trip. The caravan's youngest boy, trailing in the back, insists on naming every camel. That tall one with the floppy ear? Banana? The one with the limp? Dust bucket, yours. He calls it Frowny Grandpa. You're not offended. He's not wrong. You plod forward, you notice how the camels move like they're gliding. Their feet perfectly adapted for sand. Broad, two-toed, with tough soles that handle sharp stones like they're breadcrumbs. You, meanwhile, have had to wrap your feet twice already today. You grumble. Abdullah snorts. Mutual disrespect achieved.
Ow.
Midday, you rest in a shallow wadi. The camels kneel with that exaggerated groan, and you all unpack quickly. Food, water, grooming tools. Camels need brushing, apparently. Especially their bellies. One traveler swears that brushing lowers their stress. You try brushing Abdullah. He tries to bite you. Clearly, he's relaxed. You watch as someone adjusts a camel's nose pega. Small wooden stick tied through the nostrils with rope. Looks cruel, but you've learned it gives better control, especially when guiding through narrow passes. Still, you use it sparingly. Some in the caravan tie gentle ropes around the camel's upper lip instead. You prefer that method. Mostly because it doesn't involve the possibility of being sneezed on in the face. There's a surprising amount of camel politics in the caravan. Who gets the fastest one? Who lends theirs to the sick elder? Who shares camel milk? That's a big one. A traveler offers you a sip of fresh milk from his she-camel. It's warm, salty, and tastes like boiled sweater. You smile politely and fake a second sip. Camels aren't just transportation, they're social glue. Conversations spark during feeding. Disputes are settled over who gets to borrow a tethering rope. There's even a song everyone hums while loading cargo. Hio, hio, pull the belly tight. It doesn't make sense, but it keeps rhythm. A merchant near the front rides a decorated camel with shell ornaments tied to its bridle. He claims it brings luck. You wonder if it just scares off predators. Another camel has charms woven into its harness, blue beads, animal teeth, a strip of fabric with script inked on it. It's protection, supposedly, against evil eyes. Or maybe just sand demons. Who knows? One woman says her camel can sense bad omens. That last time she tried to cross the awash basin, her camel refused to move. An hour later, a flash flood hit. Everyone took that story very seriously except her camel, who now demands double feeding. There is a myth half remembered from your childhood that camels can remember every face they've ever seen. That if you wrong a camel, it will wait. For days, months, years, until it finds you, and at the very least, spits in your soup. You don't know if it's true, but you still apologize every time you accidentally poke Abdullah while adjusting your packs. The relationship between rider and beasts isn't always friendly, but it is a relationship. You talk to him. You tell him when you're scared, when you're tired, when you're angry. He doesn't care. But it helps. Quirky camel fact. Their humps aren't full of water. Their fat storage basically built-in food reserves. You're mildly jealous. Your belly stores things too, just not as helpfully. As the sun softens and the air cools, the caravan picks up speed. You mount Abdullah carefully, gritting your teeth through the awkward shifting as he rises like an elevator missing a few gears. Once you're up, the movement is almost soothing. Sway, step, like being rocked in a cradle built by sarcasm. The stars begin to prick the sky, and you gently pat his neck. For a moment, he doesn't flinch. You wonder, not for the first time, what he dreams about. Night in the desert isn't silent? It's a myth like camel humps being canteens or dates tasting like candy. No, the desert buzzes, sighs, clicks. Your ears are filled with the endless whisper of sand shifting, the far-off howl of something with too many teeth, and the occasional snore of a camel who forgot how to lie down properly. But your job now, nestled beside a flickering fire pit barely brighter than a candle, is to set up camp without becoming mosquito baitor. A hyena's side dish. You start with your sleeping space. It's not glamorous. You clear a patch of sand, avoiding the telltale burrows of beetles, or worse, sand scorpions. You lay down a woven mat, made from palm fibers and tightly rolled for travel. It creaks when you unroll it. Comfort level? Somewhere between prison cot and dried tortilla. Your blanket is wool, dyed with a reddish pigment from crushed ochre. It smells faintly of goat and hope. In the highlands, this would keep you warm through frost. Here in the desert, it becomes a barrier against the creeping chill that follows the sunset. Ancient Ethiopians knew how quickly temperatures could flip out here, from heat stroke at noon to shivers by midnight. As you sit cross-legged, chewing the last of your lentil mash, you glance at the flickering perimeter of the camp. A few low fires glow like sleepy eyes, spaced carefully apart. Not for warmth, though, that helps, but for deterrence. Animals fear fire. Or they pretend to, at least. You learned early in your caravan life not to rely too heavily on tents. Most travelers carry lightweight shelters, cloth wraps that can be pitched quickly over wooden poles, or stretched between two camels. But on nights like this, where the breeze is soft and the sky is freckled with stars, many simply sleep in the open. Still, you set up your windscreen, a curved barrier of palm matting reinforced with thorns to keep out sand gusts and the occasional curious jackal. It's not perfect, but you're not out here for perfection. You're out here for survival, possibly trade, and maybe the occasional moment of quiet awe. The stars tonight are endless. Bothered by light pollution or smog, the sky above the ancient desert burns with clarity. You find familiar constellations, Sirion, the Pleiades, and others you only know from elders' tales. That streak of brightness, some call it the milk trail of the first gods, spilled as they fled the sky. You nod toward it in respect, just in case. Historians still argue whether desert campsites were chosen purely for convenience, or if spiritual considerations guided their placement. Some evidence suggests traders align their campfires or sleeping rows according to celestial paths. You're not sure. You just know this spot is flatter than the last, and that matters more to your back than astrology. Nearby, someone tells a story, a traveler older than most, his voice graveled, thick, and slow. He's recounting the tale of the hyena bride, a girl who wandered too far and fell in love with a hyena disguised as a man. You've heard it before. The punchline involves teeth, betrayal, and a wedding with too much howling. Everyone chuckles politely. You tighten your blanket. There's always one tent that glows brighter, smells better, and hums with whispered music. Tonight, it belongs to a merchant queen, her caravan stacked with spices, dyes, and bundles of frankincense. She travels with servants, guards, and even a personal storyteller. You glimpsed the inside of her tent, once curtains of dyed silk, a pillow mound, and food that was warm. She doesn't camp like the rest of you. She camps like a deity on holiday. Still out here, hierarchy softens. Everyone eats under the same stars, breathes the same dry wind, and hopes the camel doesn't wander off during the night. You take comfort in that. You pull your cloak tighter. It's made from shama, a traditional cloth woven with vertical stripes. Faintly scratchy, but reliable. Some nights, it's your blanket. Other nights, it's your towel, pillow, and modesty curtain when nature calls. Versatility is key. A few feet away, a boy arranges heated stones into a circle and curls around them like a cat. You smile. That trick's as old as time. Trap heat and stone. Sleep beside it, and pretend the desert isn't breathing down your neck. There's a quiet ritual to bedtime in a caravan. Someone checks the tethering lines, making sure the camels won't bolt. Someone else tightens the knots on the trade bundles, while another scribbles notes into a wax tablet or murmurs a prayer. You sharpen your knife by habit, not because you expect trouble, but because idle hands invite disaster. A small pouch tied to your belt jingles as you shift, contains your valuables. 2 silver coins, a dried sprig of tenedam, and a bit of polished glass you found years ago and still think might be enchanted. Someone nearby burps, loudly, then groans about the bean paste. Another laughs. You chuckle softly into your blanket. These are your people for now. Dusty, cranky, and half-mad from the sun, but honest in the way only travelers can be. As the fire dims to glowing coals, your eyes drift half shut. Somewhere a camel grumbles in its sleep.
How the stars swirl a little, or maybe your brain's just tired.
You wonder if the hyena bride had second thoughts. You wonder if she missed her bed. Your last thought before slipping under is about your feet, how they've hardened, cracked, grown stronger, and how they'll carry you tomorrow into more sand, more stories, and maybe a better camp spot with fewer fire ants. Good night, dessert. Morning comes like a lazy slap slow, but impossible to ignore. You re-jolted awake by the sound of a camel somewhere near your head, clearing its throat like it's about to deliver a lecture. The horizon hasn't quite turned gold yet, but already the camp hums with soft movement. You stretch under your scratchy wool blanket, muscles stiff, mouth dry, and one leg oddly asleep from a poorly placed rock. Still, you're alive, and no scorpions nested in your shoes overnight. That's what you call a win. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is practical. A thin porridge made from teff, slightly gritty, and served lukewarm in a shallow wooden bowl. It tastes like sadness but fills your belly. Chew slowly, watching your breath fog faintly in the cool dawn air. Another traveler pulls out a packet of honeycomb, smuggled from the highlands, and offers you a corner. Sweetness cuts through the dust. Luxury like this turns strangers into friends. Most mornings in the caravan begin like a ritualized blur. Someone checks the camel tethers. Someone else yawns loudly while restacking their cargo. And everyone tries to pretend the latrine trench doesn't smell as offensive as it does. You're unpacking duty, which means folding your mat. Retying your saddlebags, still lopsided, of course, and preparing your water skin for the day's trek. Water's the first thought and the last. Your water skin is made from cured goat hide, sealed with resin. It sloshes when you lift it, cool from the night. Each sip today will matter. Ancient Ethiopian caravans didn't always have access to wells or oasis stops. That's why you and everyone else pack several of these skins, including a few with water laced with koso, a bitter plant believed to purify the gut. Historians still argue whether this plant was medicine, ritual, or just a glorified laxative. Maybe all three. You load Aba Dula with practiced hands. He grumbles, shuffles, and gives you a look that says already, but kneels anyway. His breath fogs the morning like a foghorn of disdain. You pat his neck, cinch the saddle straps, and check your pouch of salt flakes. Small, crystalline, and worth almost as much as silver. Salt, in fact, is one of the main reasons you're out here. Not gold, not incense, but slabs of salt, carved from the Danakil Flats, white as bone and heavier than they look. They're called amol and serve as currency. Whole bundles are strapped to the backs of camels, wrapped tightly and triple-checked. You've learned to sleep near yours, just in case. The elders say salt is life. It's used in rituals, medicine, preserving food, and more practically, keeping your camel from collapsing. You crush some between your fingers and rub a bit on your tongue. Sharp, clean. You imagine a merchant in the city bartering for silk with a single brick of it. As the sun peaks up like a grumpy god, you and the caravan move again. No trumpets, no ceremony. Just the slow scrape of sandals, the shuffling of camel feet, and the faint tinkling of shell charms tied to a child's walking stick. The terrain today is rocky. Small black stones crunch underfoot, sharp as baked glass. You tie thick cloth around your sandals to soften the sting. Others walk barefoot, their soles hardened by years of this. You wonder if your feet will ever get there, or if they'll just continue blistering in creative new ways. Morning brings the first mirage, a shimmer ahead like a pool of quicksilver.
Right.
You blink, but it's not real.
Act.
Someone jokes that it's a genie's bathhouse. Another says it's just the desert's way of testing your faith. You settle on optical betrayal and keep walking. You pass ancient cairns, small rock towers built by previous caravans to mark the path. Some are crumbling, others freshly stacked. One has a strip of cloth tied around it, fluttering gently. A prayer, maybe, or a warning. Historians still argue whether these markers served religious, navigational, or territorial roles. You just nod at each one like an old friend. As the sun climbs higher, you reach a plateau dotted with Tululo desert shrubs that smell like burning pepper. A few goats scamper between them, followed distantly by a barefoot boy wielding a stick and a song. You pause and wave. He nods without slowing. Everyone's got somewhere to be. You stop at midday, right before the heat starts making you see spiders in your peripheral vision. The camp is small, lazy, temporary. A few palm mats are thrown out, and someone starts boiling lentils again. You're not hungry. You chew dried dates instead, packed in a greasy cloth wrap with a few cloves of garlic hues. Garlic. Because desert breath is still breath. Quirky fact of the day: some travelers believe garlic keeps desert spirits away. Others say it just keeps other humans from talking to you. You accept both possibilities. A woman near you unwraps a small idol carved from soapstone. She wipes it carefully with her shawl, then sets it facing the west, toward the mountains. She doesn't say much. No one asks. Some prayers don't need audiences. You refill your water skin from a shared barrel, the contents filtered through linen and faintly flavored with something sharp. Tamarind maybe, or bitter herbs. You're not picky. You just drink. A camel groans nearby, chewing its cud like it owes someone money. Back on the trail, the afternoon heat rolls over you like a slow, dry wave. Even your thoughts begin to feel sandblasted. Time stretches. You walk. You listen to the rhythmic clinking of the camel harnesses. You daydream about shade. In the far distance, you spot a shimmer of color-red cloth. Maybe another caravan? A trader's post? A mirage playing games again? You squint, but it's gone before you can decide. It's just as well. Still got salt to guard, miles to walk, and a camel who's starting to look suspiciously amused. You adjust your head wrap, mutter something at the sun, and keep going. The desert doesn't care. That's part of the charm. By late afternoon, you begin to feel like a piece of overcooked injera, flaky, dry, and barely holding shape. The sun hangs like molten brass in the sky, and everything, your robes, your camel, your optimism, feels one good gust away from crumbling. Still, you march on. Today's leg of the journey hugs an ancient trade route, one etched into stone and memory. Beneath your feet, the sand occasionally reveals sunken cobbles, slippery and uneven, but definitely man-made. Some say these paths were carved during the height of the Aksumite Empire, a civilization so sophisticated it had coinage-written script, and international trade deals while parts of Europe were still sorting out plumbing. You pause at a worn stone slab, partly buried in drifted sand. Faint inscriptions curl along its Ethiopian script, probably a trader's marker or maybe an ancient road dedication. Historians still argue whether these route markers were official imperial projects or just graffiti from bored merchants. Either way, you trace your finger over the carved lines and imagine the hands that left them. Your camel, however, has no appreciation for historical significance. Abdullah snorts and starts chewing on a thorn bush, as if trying to become one with the landscape. You bribe him with a scrap of dried grass, then gently guide him forward. Around a bend, the land opens into a wide, shallow basin rimmed with weather-worn boulders. Your group halts here, dust-kissed and half-dazed. This, your guide explains, is one of the old rest hollows, naturally sheltered spaces where ancient travelers would pause during the hottest hours. You dismount, letting your legs remember what standing without movement feels like. Someone pulls out a sheet of palm fiber to lay down and starts unpacking some tea leaves. Yes, tea. Out here, under the unrelenting sun, the thing you crave is hot water with bitter herbs. It makes no sense. And yet somehow it works. You gather in the shade of a boulder with 3 others. The tea is steeped in a dented iron pot that looks older than anyone in the group. Into it go crushed leaves, a pinch of salt, and 1 questionable cinnamon stick. The resulting brew smells like damp socks and divine intervention. You sip slowly, grateful. A young girl from another caravan arrives with her donkey in tow. She offers a basket of flatbread, dense and round, stuffed with stewed lentils and sprinkled with dried fenugreek. You trade her a strand of cowrie shells, watching her eyes light up. Cowries, though long out of style in many places, still carry trade value here. They're shiny, pretty, and whisper of the sea, even hundreds of miles inland. Someone points to a cliff face in the distance, etched with faint white lines. Petroglyphs, maybe. Or old shepherd markings. Historians still argue whether these desert carvings were religious symbols, property claims, or just ancient boredom scratched into stone. You squint at them, half hoping for a message from someone equally tired. Then, a low drone fills the air. Not a machine, not a horn, but a human voice. One of the elders has started chanting. His voice ripples out over the rocks like smoke, low and steady. It's a hymn, you think. Or maybe a poem meant to bring peace to the desert. The words are old, older than memory, but you feel their shape in your chest. Quirky fact of the day: some travelers swear the desert has moods, and if you offend, it's A. By mocking its silence or relieving yourself too close to a cairn it remembers. A bad wind, a sudden sandstorm, a string of broken straps. Coincidence, maybe, but you've heard too many stories to be cocky. So when the elder finishes his chant, you whisper a soft amen, just in case. As the sun begins to dip, the landscape softens. The brutal glare fades to a hazy bronze, casting long shadows and bathing the rocks in warmth. You stretch your legs and help reload the camels. Abdullah seems suspiciously cheerful now, probably because his load is slightly lighter thanks to your earlier salt trade. The next few hours pass in a strange rhythm. Crunching footsteps, the occasional laugh, a sneeze that spooks half the pack animals. You tune your ears to the desert's subtle soundtrack. A hawk cries overhead. Somewhere far off, a fox barks once, twice. Then, without warning, you stumble on ruins. Just a few crumbling stone walls, half sunken in sand, their corners square but softened by centuries of erosion. No sign, no plaque, just a ghost of something once grand. You and another traveler wander closer. A few pieces of pottery peek out from the soil. A handle here, a bit of painted rim there. These could be the remains of a caravanserai roadside in 4 ancient traders. Or maybe it was a temple, or a small village, long abandoned. Historians still argue naturally, but you like to imagine laughter once echoed between these stones. You take a flat shard of clay, study the faint spiral painted onto it, then gently place it back. Not everything needs to be taken. Some things just want to be remembered. You set up camp nearby. It feels fitting resting beside the bones of travelers past. Tonight, you help build the fire. Your hands move without thinking. Twigs, dried camel dung, a flint strike, then the sigh of ignition. Warmth, light, the comfort of flame. Supper is simpler than usual. Strips of dried meat rehydrated in broth, served with a mash of roasted chickpeas. Someone managed to salvage a few wild onions, and their pungent bite lifts the whole meal. You're halfway through when someone breaks out a flute hand-carved, faintly cracked, but still capable of music. The tune is old. Melancholy, circular, soft as twilight. You close your eyes. The fire flickers on your eyelids like a slow dance. The wind hums softly against your cloak. A camel shifts its weight, bells chiming lazily. The stars appear again, this time more tentative one. Then 2, then dozens. You lie back, watching them multiply, your full belly rising and falling like a tide. You think about the stone inscriptions, the girl's flatbread, the ruins half swallowed by time. Everything here fades, but everything also lingers. You drift off, like a grain of sand caught in a breeze. You wake up to a chill, one that sneaks down the back of your neck like a mischievous spirit looking for attention. The desert has a strange way of rewriting its mood overnight. By day it wants to burn you alive, and by morning it flirts with frostbite. You wrap your shawl tighter, blinking sleep from your eyes, as the horizon begins its slow burn toward dawn. The fire from last night has burned down 2 embers, still glowing faintly like sleepy coals unwilling to rise. You prod it with a stick, coaxing out a few sparks. Someone else tosses in a handful of dried roots, and soon a weak flame dances back to life, shivering in the wind. Breakfast today is slightly more ambitious. Someone brought a bundle of color-roasted barley mixed with flax and a few crushed nuts. You chew it slowly, savoring the warmth and the slight crunch. A generous soul passes around a round of spiced butter tea. It tastes like someone melted a cow into your cup, but in this cold, it's oddly perfect. The route today takes you deeper into the highlands up, through a series of stony ridges dotted with scrub and the occasional baobab tree, their swollen trunks like ancient water jars. The camels complain with every incline. So do your knees. Your thighs begin a low, passive-aggressive ache that grows louder with every step. As you crest a ridge, a vista spreads out before you, valleys ribboned with dry stream beds, clusters of acacia trees, and far in the distance, a flicker of silver where water still clings in an ancient well. The sight fills your chest with quiet awe. The well has probably been there for centuries, maybe longer. Some say it was built during the Zagu dynasty, when kings ruled from mountain fortresses and sent emissaries down these same routes, cloaked in red and dust. Historians still argue whether these wells were communal projects or royal commissions, but one thing's certain, they've saved more lives than all the desert prayers combined. You stop for water there by mid-morning. Approach is marked with stacked stones and a line of scratched wooden poles, the local signal for clean, but be polite. You wait your turn, listening to the echo of a goat's bleat bouncing between the rocks. A boy lowers a skin bucket, draws it back up, and offers it to the group without a word. The water tastes metallic and slightly muddy, but to you, it might as well be wine. You rinse your face, splash a bit on your hands, and marvel at the way your fingers instantly feel human again. Then it's onward. The path narrows along a steep embankment where the wind whistles like it's trying to get your attention. You lean into the rock face, gripping a thick stick for balance. Abdullah, loyal but fussy, grunts and grumbles behind you, his padded feet surprisingly sure on the loose stones. You mutter something about being replaced by a donkey in your next life, and keep moving. You pass a cluster of twisted trees, leafless, bone-dry, but carved with strange notches. Someone beside you points. These aren't natural. They're tally marks, ancient desert math. Some believe traders kept count of trips here, marking the trees with a knife or chisel to track their return. Others think they were ritual markings for safe passage. Historians, of course, still argue both. Either way, you pause and add a notch of your own, nothing dramatic, just a small diagonal line at the base. A whisper to the past. Around midday, you reach a small stone enclosure nestled in the bend of the trail. It's a shrine, simple but oddly beautiful. Inside sits a carved figure, part human, part animal. Long ears, wide eyes, hands pressed together. You can't quite tell if it's supposed to bring luck or warn you away, but it draws you in just the same. Someone lights a stick of resin incense and tucks it into a crevice near the figure's feet. Smoke curls upward, sweet and sharp. You follow suit, offering a few grains of salt and a murmured thank you. You're not even sure to whom. But again, better safe than cursed. Your quirky tidbit for the day? Ancient Ethiopians believed certain rock formations housed desert spirits, known as wakwak. These weren't malicious, exactly just deeply moody. If you passed without paying respect, they might rearrange your path, move your water skin, or, in one colorful tale, braid your camel's tail into impossible knots overnight. You've seen stranger things. You bow slightly to the shrine on your way out. Lunch is a moving affair. You chew on strips of dried mango, tart and fibrous, alternating bites with roasted lentil balls wrapped in fig leaves. It's not glamorous, but it keeps the stomach from grumbling loud enough to attract jackals. The afternoon sun begins its lazy descent. Shadows stretch. Your caravan moves like a slow beast snaking through dry gullies, past clusters of desert flowers clinging defiantly to life. You spot one that's a shock of crimson hemanthus, the locals call it, blood lily. Supposedly, if you find one in bloom, it's good luck. You pluck a petal, tuck it behind your ear, just in case. Then a surprise. A caravan coming the other way. Dozens of figures in bright shawls and dust-worn robes. Camels with elaborate harnesses. Children riding donkeys. The two groups greet each other with cautious optimisms, miles that don't quite trust yet, but are willing to. You trade pleasantries, salt for dried dates, a scrap of cloth for a vial of spice. One elder from the opposite caravan pulls out a carved mapius, a piece of bark etched with roots and markers, passed down like an heirloom. Historians still argue whether these bark maps were symbolic or practical. You hold it in your hands and feel both. You part ways just before dusk, waving as they disappear into the shimmering air behind you. For a brief moment, you wonder what it would be like to follow them instead. But Abdullah seems determined to keep you pointed forward. Camp tonight is set against a rock wall, offering a natural windbreak. A few of the younger travelers race to the top to watch the sunset. You join them, breath short, legs wobbling, but the view is worth it. The sky melts into amber and violet, and for a moment, even the wind falls quiet. Dinner is a stew of unknown origins, some kind of tuber mixed with goat fat and pepper. You eat it with flatbread cooked directly on a hot stone, flipping it with your bare fingers like a pro. Or a fool. Either way, The tips of your fingers are slightly singed. The stars appear again, startling in their clarity. Someone starts to hum. Few others join in. It's not a song you know, but you follow the melody, letting it carry you gently into sleep. Sleep doesn't last long out here. The desert isn't known for its hospitality, especially when you re-curled up on a thin blanket with a rock pretending to be a pillow. You're woken by a camel's sneeze, loud, wet, and startling enough to make your heart stutter. Abdullah stands nearby looking completely unbothered, chewing like he's just solving world hunger in his mouth. You sit up your back protesting like an old councilman. Around you, the camp stirs. Someone is already stoking the fire, coaxing it back from its dreamy coals. Others move silently, wrapped in shawls, collecting water skins, checking saddle straps. Nobody talks much in the morning, not because they're tired, but because the desert has a hush that insists on reverence. You respect that? Breakfast is a thick porridge of teff and goat milk, spiced with cardamom and something vaguely smoky. You eat it slowly, letting it coat your insides like a warm shield. Someone shares a handful of dried fig, sugary and leathery, with tiny seeds that snap like sand between your teeth. Today's journey takes you down into one of the great wadis, those wide, dry riverbeds that snake like scars across the land. They only flood in rare downpours, and when they do, it's sudden and biblical. But today, it's just cracked mud and scattered stones. You descend carefully, your sandals crunching against the brittle surface. As you walk, you spot odd clumps of grass growing in near-perfect circles. Your guide gestures. Termite domes, he says, almost reverently. These miniature ecosystems hum with life beneath the surface, keeping moisture locked in for weeks longer than the rest of the desert. Some ancient travelers would camp near them, trusting that where termites could survive, humans probably could too. It's a logic you can get behind. The real treasure today isn't biological, but it's architectural. About an hour into the march, a wide rock outcrop reveals something unexpected. A carved staircase leading down. The group pauses. Nobody rushes. This is one of those moments where history feels like it's peeking out just to check on you. Your guide approaches cautiously, brushing sand away with a palm. The staircase descends into a shaded crevice, where the air smells damp and impossibility in this climate. You follow the group down, ducking beneath a stone lintel until you emerge into what can only be called a chamber. A cool, dark chamber, carved from solid rock. Along the walls, faded paintings flicker under torchlight. Ochre outlines of animals, ibex, lions, a long-necked ostrich. And there in the corner, a figure with exaggerated eyes and arms outstretched, flanked by what looks like bundles, travel bundles, pouches, skins, baskets. Someone long ago made a packing list in paint. Mainstream historians agree these rock churches and caves often found in the Tigra and Axum regions were sacred sites and resting spots for pilgrims. But whether this one was a holy site or just a really dramatic storage unit, well, historians still argue about that. Either way, it's magical. Quirky moment of the day. One member of your caravan reaches up and taps the wall gently, then pulls back their finger with a triumphant "Ha!" It's magnetic. A tiny flecks of hematite and a stone pullet, iron rings and buckles. You spend 5 ridiculous minutes testing it with your belt buckle and feeling like a wizard. Outside again, the air feels hotter, somehow insulted that you left its embrace. But your body's gotten used to the rhythm now. Wake, walk, wonder, repeat. You press on. The landscape changes subtly. The sand here is darker, almost purplish, less windblown. You spot clusters of sharp, spiraled shells scattered across the ground fossils. This was once sea. It's an inland sea, long dried up and forgotten. You imagine fish darting where camels now trudge, coral where thorn bushes bloom. It's hard to wrap your head around, but beautiful all the same. You break for lunch beneath a stone archway carved by wind and time. The shade is patchy, but still precious. Your meal is cool, lentil paste wrapped in banana leaf, chased with salty yogurt and sips from a shared clay jug. Someone plays a soft rhythm on a drum made from stretched goatskin, and a few others start clapping along. For a moment, it feels like a backyard cookout. Your backyard had hyenas and fossilized seashells. As you pack up, the wind shifts sand. With it comes a scent. Acrid, burning. You and a few others look up. In the distance, a plume of black smoke curls into the sky like a question mark. Not a campfire, not a controlled burn. Something's wrong. You move quickly, the caravan huddling closer, more alert now. As you crest a low hill, the source becomes clear. A wrecked trading camp. Tents collapsed, goods scattered, no people in sight. The camels sniff the air nervously. Your group approaches carefully. What happened here, bandits? A lightning strike? Historians still argue whether these events were common or sensationalized in old records. But the truth hits you hard. The desert is no museum. It doesn't freeze history in glass. Keeps moving. You don't linger. Few usable supplies or salvaged a bag of dried okra, a cracked water skin, one still good rope hand. Then you move on, sobered, quiet. The wind picks up as if trying to erase the scene behind you. That night you camp early. No fires this time, just low conversation and careful watching. You huddle beneath your shawl, eyes scanning the starlit horizon, ears tuned for every scrape and rustle. Dinner is quiet. It's chickpea mash, flatbread, and tiny cubes of dried cheese that squeak between your teeth. Nobody complains. You're too grateful. Too aware of how thin the line is between surviving and not. Later, as you lie down, the desert feels heavier, but not cruel. Just ancient. Unbothered by your tiny presence. You listen to Aba Dula breathing beside you, soft and slow, like a bellows settling into sleep. You close your eyes, and the last thing you see is that fossil-studded path, stretching ahead, still calling you forward. You wake up before the sun, not because you wanted to, trust me. You never wanted taupe, because the desert air has this way of slipping into your bones during the last hours of night. Your nose is cold, your toes are colder. And your blanket, which seemed cozy at dusk, now feels like it's made of air and regret. The sky is still ink dark, but a soft band of pale orange begins to pull across the horizon like someone cracking open a sleepy eye. Around you, the caravan rouses without speaking. These aren't the mornings for jokes or debates, just movement. Quiet, shivering movement. Someone hands you a cup of warm barley tea, its surface flecked with crushed coriander. It smells like something that might actually fix your spine, which is now shaped like a question mark thanks to last night's rock pillow. You drink slowly, savoring the bitter earthy flavor and that tiny moment of warmth before the wind wakes up. Today's trail leads up and out of the dry basin, through a narrow pass carved between black volcanic stone. The ground is rough here, less dust, more shards. Your sandals click with each step, and occasionally one of them betrays you, sliding against a loose bit of obsidian. You curse the stone in your head, loudly, and possibly in 3 languages. Aba Dula seems fine. Of course he is. He could probably do this entire journey backwards with a teapot balanced on his hump. Just before mid-morning, the landscape opens into a flat plain dotted with odd stone formations tall. Thin spires that look like they were pulled from the earth by curious gods and then forgotten. Some are stacked precariously, others carved with long vertical lines. Your guide raises a hand and says, "Watch this." He picks up a stone and tosses it at one of the pillars. The sound that echoes out isn't a dull thud, it's a deep melodic hum, like a giant tuning fork buried under your feet. You all stare? This is singing stone, he explains. Certain minerals, when struck just right, resonate with eerie vibrations. No one knows if the ancients carved the pillars to amplify the effect, or if they just stumbled into a really weird party trick. Historians still argue whether these formations served a ritual purpose or were just natural acoustics that got co-opted into local lore. You take your turn, tossing a small stone with a flick. The resulting sound is low, long, and strangely comforting, like the desert humming back at you. You could stay here for hours, but your camel has other ideas. Back on the trail, the sun sharpens. There's no cloud cover today, no mercy. You drape a thin cloth over your head, tucking it under your chin like a grandma, and daring anyone to laugh. Nobody does. Everyone looks like cloth-wrapped ghosts of themselves by now. At noon, you come across a half-buried ruin. Just a few stone walls, really, and the remnants of what might have been a fire pit. Stones are scorched black on one side, smooth on the other. You kneel and brush away some sand. They're scratched into the stone are symbols, spirals, lines, maybe a stylized eye. Mainstream scholars believe these were way stations, perhaps used during long transregional pilgrimages. But the specific markings? No one can quite agree. Some think they're Protegea's script, others say they're territorial signs, and one fringe theory argues they're early music notation, which, if true, means you're kneeling in the first desert karaoke bar. You hum quietly, just in case. For lunch, you eat dried lentil cakes and a surprisingly spicy paste made from fermented cabbage. You're not sure whether it was meant to be spicy, or if it's just very old, but either way, your sinuses are officially awake. The afternoon stretches long and strangely hypnotic. The landscape loses details, just flat sand, pale sky, and distant mirages that shimmer like promises. You fall into a rhythm. Left foot, right foot, shift the pack, sip water, repeat. Your thoughts start to drift. You wonder how many traders have walked this exact path. How many barefoot priests? How many bored teenagers carrying bundles of incense to earn coin for marriage dowries? How many packed all the same essentials you did? Dried meat, spoon, a lucky charm, something fermented in a pouch that smells like socks but cures everything. Quirky note of the day. Some travelers believe tying 7 knots into your belt before a trip could ward off desert spirits. You spot someone ahead of you doing just that, fingers working methodically, murmuring under their breath. You can decide if it ease superstition or just a way to feel less powerless under the big hot sky. Either way, you tie your own knot 7 times, just in case. By late afternoon, the terrain shifts again. The path curves up a slight incline, and then there it is, a small outpost. Just for buildings. All stone and timber, clustered around a well that's so deep the bucket takes a full minute to hit the bottom. Someone drops a stone and listens. You wait, plunk. Everyone exhales. This isn't a village exactly, more like a desert Airbnb for caravans. When your companions are waved in by a woman with a weathered face and arms like rope, she offers bowls of fermented milk and says, "Sit. No dying in my courtyard." You don't argue. You rest under a woven canopy, muscles sighing with each inch of stillness. One of the walls here is painted with ochre and ash scenes of long journeys. Birds with outstretched wings, bundles carried on heads and camels. It feels oddly intimate, like the desert itself has been journaling. After dinner, goat stew with wild garlic and flatbread that tastes like ashes and heaven, you gather around the courtyard's fire. Stories begin, softly at first, then louder. One man tells of a trip where his camel refused to move unless someone walked ahead playing a flute. Another woman swears she once saw a pack of hyenas carrying torches. Possibly not. Someone else shares a tale of a lost traveler who found a talking tortoise that led him to water, only to vanish before thanks could be given. Was it a spirit, you ask? No, she replies with a grin. Just a very helpful tortoise. Sleep under the stars again, but tonight feels different. Safer somehow. It's like the desert has taken a step back and decided to let you pass for now. And just before your eyes close, you hear the soft, low tone of one of those singing stones again. Someone is humming along. Maybe it's you. The morning begins with the hollow clatter of a wooden ladle against a brass pot, your call to wakefulness. You stir, face still creased with sleep, mouth dry as the underside of a sandal. A boy with wide eyes and a missing front tooth passes you a small bowl of gruel flavored with roasted fenugreek. It's gritty, but warm. And at this point, that's all you need. The outpost woman gives you a small, tightly wrapped bundle before you leave. Charcoal and cloves, she says. Chew it when your stomach tries to escape your body. You thank her like she has just handed you a sacred relic. Because, honestly, she has. The desert welcomes you back with a dramatic sigh of wind and a swarm of gnats that seem personally offended by your face. You swat and trudge forward. Today's leg is long, and word is there's no shade until sunset. That kind of news hits differently out here. You grip your walking stick like it owes you money and keep moving. Soon, the path narrows into a dusty corridor flanked by jagged basalt. It feels like walking through the ribs of a dead beast. The rock radiates heat. Every step kicks up a puff of dust that smells faintly of ash and old bone. Abdullah pauses and looks back. "Rockfall zone," he says, almost too casually. You glance up at the overhanging boulders and mutter a quick plea to whatever ancient deity handles falling objects. One loose cough from the sky and you'd be a pancake. This stretch of the journey would once have been guarded. Mainstream historical records mention that ACMIT officials stationed scouts in narrow passes like this to protect trade routes or, depending on your luck, to extort travelers. Historians still argue whether these tolls were legitimate protection fees, or just a nice way of saying, give us half your stuff. You spot a weathered post jutting from the rock, a wooden beam lashed with fraying leather strips. It's likely the remnant of one of those checkpoints. The leather has tiny notches in it, symbols denoting clan names, payment status, maybe even magical blessings against robbery. Or maybe they're just doodles. Nobody agrees. But it's oddly charming. The sun climbs higher, turning your shawl into a portable oven. You drink in sips. Not gulps. Even though your throat feels like it's been sandpapered. You remember the cloves and charcoal, chewing them with slow, deliberate bites. They help a little, and something strange catches your eye. Faint trail, not a path exactly, but a line of irregular mounds leading off the main route. Abdullah halts, squints, then grunts approvingly. Storage line, he says. You follow it for a few hundred paces until you reach a rock ledge. Hidden beneath it are clay jars. Some cracked, some sealed. You open one carefully. Inside, dried resin, frankincense, hardened into glassy clumps. Still aromatic, still sacred. These hidden caches were used by merchants traveling in staggered convoys. You couldn't always carry everything at once, so you left supplies in known spots. Marked by signs only your group understood, like those notched posts, or occasionally patterns of tide grasses. Mainstream scholars accept this practice, but fringe theories suggest some of the caches doubled as ritual offerings. One theory even claims they were watched over by semi-nomadic shrine keepers, who taxed the jars with little tokens, clay figurines, charms, or carved beetles. There's no carved beetle in your jar, just a dead scorpion. You count that as neutral. You return to the path, slightly more resin-scented and a lot more cautious. The afternoon heat stretches endlessly. Mirages begin their cruel dance again, shimmering pools just out of reach. A cluster of stones in the distance looks eerily like people crouching. You blink. Still just rocks. Lunch is a grim affair. You nibble dried okra and chew on strips of salted goat until your jaw begs for retirement. You find a rock to lean against, though it's hot enough to fry judgment. Still, it beats standing. To lighten the mood, someone in the group starts describing the weirdest thing they ever packed for a trip. One man says he once brought a full-size bronze mirror into the Danakil and used it to scare off hyenas. Another swears by carrying a tiny clay stove to make coffee real coffee, not boiled dirt. Abdullah just shrugs and says, "My cousin brought a lute. It broke. We blamed a spirit." It wasn't a spirit. You laugh not because it's particularly funny, but because it feels human and necessary. The day's final stretch winds through a dry gorge dotted with acacia trees, their canopies like spiky parasols. You spot bright yellow weaver birds flitting between branches, their nests hanging like ornaments. One drops a feather, drifts onto your path. You pick it up and tuck it into your sash, because why not? Suddenly, the group halts. Abdullah raises his hand. In the silence, you hear it. A low thrum, steady and rhythmic. Not natural. You edge forward until the source becomes clear, an ancient water wheel. Still turning in the wind, creaking like old bones but working, it's attached to a stone cistern, cracked but full. Miraculous. This, your guide explains, is one of the old sakia, a mechanical irrigation system the Axumites adapted from Egyptian technology. It uses animal power, or in this case wind, to draw water from deep wells. Some are still functional thanks to clever engineering and the obsessive maintenance of desert custodians who vanish before you can thank them. Historians still argue whether these systems were widespread or rare. But standing in front of one now, it feels like you've stumbled into a secret. The group fills their water skins reverently. No talking, just splashing, the creak of the wheel, and the soft slosh of salvation. You set up camp early tonight. Tents go up. Fires are sparked. You're allowed one real luxury: warm water to rinse your feet. It feels like a spiritual experience. You practically cry into the bowl. Dinner is a stew of lentils, wild sorghum, and surprise some of that fermented cabbage paste again. It's either growing on you or destroying your taste buds. Someone passes around a small carved box. Inside are trinkets left by other travelers, a bone comb, a sliver of turquoise, a worn-out amulet. You add your weaver bird feather, not because it's valuable, but because it feels right. Like leaving a piece of yourself behind to whisper, "I was here too." You fall asleep under a net of stars, belly full, soul a little softer. Somewhere nearby, the water wheel creaks on, and the desert, for tonight at least, doesn't argue. The morning docent tea so much greet you as politely thump you on the head with a chill wind. You roll over on your mat, tucked under your threadbare blanket like a half-forgotten dumpling, and let out a low groan that sounds like it came from the bottom of a clay jar. You're sore in places you didn't know had names. Your ankles creak, your shoulders complain, and your back. Your back left for another dimension during the night and has yet to return. But there's no time for dramatic stretching. Today is a long haul across a dried riverbed, and if you don't leave early, the winds pick up and turn the whole place into a giant exfoliating scrub. You pack quickly water skins, lentil pouches, spare cloth, that tiny chunk of goat jerky you're pretending you don't see again and again. You pause for a second, then tuck the old charcoal clove bundle into your pouch like a personal relic. You never know when you'll need spiritual antacid. The caravan moves out, feet crunching over cracked earth. The dried riverbed spreads wide like a scar across the land. White gray clay curled at the edges, split into jigsaw patterns by the sun. There's no clear path, it's just the general direction of forward, and whatever instincts your guides are trusting today. Abdullah points to a ridge on your left. It used to be a dock, he says. You look at its barely distinguishable line of larger stones, some stacked, others toppled. But long ago, boats came here. Ethiopia's ancient trade routes weren't just by camel and sandal. In wetter eras, seasonal rivers surged through this now cracked expanse, letting small vessels carry incense, ivory, and other goods inland. Mainstream history acknowledges the Nile-linked trade routes, but evidence suggests a network of dry-season watercourses like this smaller, more erratic, but still important. Historians still argue whether these river routes were ever reliable or mostly symbolic, with trade just piggybacking on them when rains permitted. The thought of a boat gently drifting over what's now a bone-dry basin is weirdly comforting. You imagine yourself in a reed canoe, gliding past crocodiles instead of dodging cactus thorns. Not safer, necessarily, but somehow breezier. Halfway across the basin, you spot something half buried in the dust. It glints. You kneel. It's a bronze clasp, ornately etched, likely once part of a traveling merchant's bag. Still attached is a scrap of textile faded red and black stripes. You rub it gently between your fingers. Crumbles, fragile as onion skin. Abdullah leans over. Trader from the east, he murmurs. Maybe Himmerite or Yemeni. He doesn't sound sad, just curious, like the desert is a library, and this is just another footnote. You tuck the clasp back into the ground. Leave it be. That traveler's story ended here. Yours hasn't. After hours of walking, you break near a cluster of tamarisk, trees-bushy, salt-tolerant survivors that huddle together like gossipy old ants. Their roots dig deep, sometimes finding pockets of water buried like treasure beneath the clay. You chew on a stick bitter, slightly minty and hope it tricks your brain into ignoring your empty stomach. Quirky fact for today. Some ancient travelers swore by firestones, chunks of desert quartz said to hold the sun's heat through the night. You're skeptical until Abdullah hands you one. It's faintly warm, even after sitting in his pack for hours. You nod, then promptly name it Harold and assign it protective duties over your pouch of dried beans. The caravan pushes forward again. Now, the land rears slowly, subtly. You begin the climb out of the riverbed. The wind picks up just as promised. Grit stings your cheeks, and everyone pulls their scarves higher. It's like walking into a slow-motion sandblaster, only without the goggles or union brakes. Your guide stops near a flat-topped hill and raises a hand. "Look out, Rock," he says. Clamber up behind him, heart hammering, lungs mildly furious. From the top, the view opens wide, rolling dunes, rocky outcrops, and in the far distance, the faint shimmer of structures, towers, ruins, mirage. The place is called Tiakulel, and though it's not on any modern map, Locals have known it forever. Abdullah says it was once a relay station where long-distance runners, yes, actual runners, carried messages ahead of the caravan. They were trained from childhood, able to sprint across 50 miles of open desert in a day, wearing little more than belts of date paste and confidence. Historians still argue whether these runners were elite messengers, religious emissaries, or just the ancient equivalent of postal interns with good cardio. Either way, one of the cracked walls below once held scrolls smudged with ink recipes and rude instructions. Now just silence and drifting sand. You descend and pass what's left of a circular fire pit ringed by Bones goat or gazelle. Hard to say. The rocks are charred, the air still faintly smoky even after all this time. Your mind drifts to those runners again. Did they eat here, sleep, complain about foot blisters and difficult camel bosses? The sun finally begins its slow drop. The sky shifts from harsh blue to amber. Shadows lengthen. Your stomach snarls like a displeased jackal. Dinner can't come soon enough. You stop for the night near a natural depression that catches dew barely a sip's worth, but enough to moisten cloth and trickle into shallow pits dug by practiced hands. Everyone moves slowly now, like sleepwalkers in sunburns. Dinner tonight is roasted wild barley, crushed with a stone and mixed with riverbed salt and dried onion flakes. It's crunchy and tastes like hope mixed with pebbles. You eat every grain. Someone produces a small leather drum, worn smooth. They tap it gently. A rhythm starts. Another person claps in time. The beat is slow, repetitive, almost like a heartbeat. You don't dance exactly, but your shoulders sway, your feet tap. The dessert, it seems, likes music as much as you do. Later, someone tells a story about a woman who once crossed this basin with nothing but a falcon and a sickle. She stole from bandits, fed orphans, and vanished into myth. Fringe scholars call her pure legend. Some locals say she was real. And your guide? He just shrugs and says some people do the impossible. Once, you lie down on your mat, head pillowed on your half-empty pack. The stars blink on one by one, then all at once, the wind slows. You close your eyes, Harold, the warm rock still tucked in your hand like a relic from a story too old to end. Dawn breaks in tones of slate blue and burnt gold. The kind of morning that makes you briefly believe you've figured life out, until you try standing. Every muscle complains. Loudly, you mutter apologies to your own knees and get upright with all the grace of a collapsing stack of scrolls. Your pack feels heavier today, though you've eaten half its contents and emotionally bonded with the other half. Still, you hoist it over your shoulder and press on, following Abdullah into the soft golden haze ahead. The terrain shifts again, less sand, more scrub. Tough, wiry plants claw at your calves. Flat rocks gleam with morning dew that will evaporate by mid-morning. The smell here is different, earthier, more herbal, almost smoky. It smells ancient. You joke to yourself that it smells like time itself took a long nap here and maybe forgot to shower. You're entering the realm of incense. Caravan moves in reverent silence past a stand of boswellia, tree-short, knotted things with peeling bark like they're shedding old stories. These are the holy resin trees, the lifeblood of ancient Ethiopian trade, frankincense, myrrh. You could strip a handful of bark, right now, and maybe retire on the value, except you wouldn't tea, because even now, thousands of years later, there's an unspoken law. You only harvest when the tree allows. Mainstream history agrees on the importance of these exports. Frankincense traveled across the Red Sea, through Arabia, into India and Rome, but here is a fringe tidbit for you. Some ancient texts suggest the resin wasn't tea, just cargo. It was currency. Weighed, traded, even hoarded like silver. Some temples demanded it as tax, others as tribute. Historians still argue whether those taxes were religious dues or clever economic pressure disguised as worship. You kneel beside one tree. Its bark has fresh scars, shallow but deliberate. Sap beads along them like tears, slowly hardening into golden drops. One clings to your fingertip. Smells like citrus and spice and something unplaceable like old magic or your grandmother's kitchen if she had wizard tendencies. Abdullah lets you take one small lump. You burn it tonight, he says. It's for blessing. For not dying yesterday. Fair enough. By midday, you arrive at a tiny shelter carved into a sandstone outcrop. It's not much, just a cave with soot-black walls, a stone shelf, and a few clay bowls left behind by travelers unknown. One bowl still holds dried herbs. You sniff cautiously. It smells like thyme, but angrier. You settle in for a rest, and the conversation turns to survival kits. What ancient Ethiopians, packed varied by tribe, season, and superstition but patterns, emerge. You're told about bundles of salted fish, handfuls of roasted teff, a kind of iron utility spike that functioned as both tool and weapon, and a surprising quantity of perfume. Yep, scented oils weren't just luxury, they kept insects away, covered up trail sweat, and infringed beliefs, confused evil spirits. One traveler once carried a monkey skull filled with powdered mint. Why? For guidance, someone says, vague as mist. Historians still argue whether such talismans were common or just weird one-offs. But enough have been found buried near roots like this to suggest they weren't rare. You ask about medicines? Kabadula rattles off a list. Crushed mustard seed for fever, goat bile for wounds, burnt date pits for toothaches. You chew more cloves just in case. In the afternoon you cross a plateau pocked with small stone, cairns some knee-high, some towering over your head. They mark graves, yes, but also turning points, camp spots, and in some cases, warnings. One has symbols scratched into its face, wavy lines and eye, and what looks like a cat with an attitude problem. You ask what it means, your guide grins. It means turn back if you're stupid. It's unclear whether he's joking. You choose to laugh anyway. You pass a narrow stone pass where a cool breeze channels through like breath from a sleeping god. You stop here, not because you're tired, though. You are but because the air feels sacred. Everyone quiets. A child ties a bit of cloth to a thorny bush, a gesture of thanks. You follow suit with a shred from your scarf. The bush shivers in the wind, now cloaked in fragments of prayers. As the day fades, the terrain turns cruel again, sharp gravel, thin paths. One wrong step, and it's a fast roll into a ravine. Your legs ache, your canteen sloshes low, and your patience has begun to draft a resignation letter. But then you see it. A tall, finger-like pillar of stone rises in the distance. Not natural, not even close. Its carved, chiseled lines, smoothed faces, and etchings you can't quite read from here. Abdullah nods, satisfied. Marker stone, he says. We're close. These stones dotted old Ethiopian trade paths like mile markers, some plain, some covered in GS script, some with elaborate glyphs that blend tribal patterns with solar and lunar symbols. Mainstream scholars say they served as route guides and territorial notices. Fringe theories say they were also imbued with ritual function spots to pour offerings or speak certain words. Historians still argue whether their placement followed geographic necessity or cosmic alignment. Either way, they're beautiful. Up close, the stone hums faintly under your palm. It's not literally, but there's something in the shape, the smoothness, the age. It feels like touching the elbow of the world. You close your eyes for a second and imagine the hands that carved it calloused, precise, patient. You leave a tiny bead of frankincense at its base, your own little thank you. The night camp is set on a ridge overlooking a wide basin, the trail just visible below like a thread stitched across the land. The stars come faster tonight. Maybe they're excited. Maybe they know what tomorrow brings. Dinner is a mash of lentils, wild herbs, and praise the ancestors, a pinch of dried lemon. It tastes like actual hope. Around the fire, someone starts singing a lullaby in a language you don't know but somehow understand. You pull out your scrap of cloth again and tie it around your wrist. You think of the riverbed, the stone marker, the whispering trees, of the runners and the resin and the monkey skullmet jar. And you realize you're not just walking through history anymore, you're carrying it. You wake before the sun, stirred by a strange hush, not silence exactly, but the kind of expectant quiet that makes your ears feel too loud for your head. The stars are still there, blinking like they forgot to leave. You sit up slowly, your blanket half draped, half dusty. Your mouth is dry, your back is furious. But your feet have achieved a higher state of existence. Not better, just separate. They no longer belong to you, they belong to the road. No time for stretching or small talk this morning. Today is about the ascent. You chew a few leftover lentils, sip exactly 3 gulps of water, and fall in line behind the others. No one speaks much. The trail tilts upward, and the rhythm of walking changes. Shorter strides, heavier breath, more mental bargaining with invisible desert gods. As you climb, the world opens. Below, the trail winds like a forgotten string. Beyond it, flatlands give way to jagged teeth of hills, scattered like giant pottery shards. The air grows thinner, cooler. You tighten your scarf, partly for warmth, partly to keep from tasting your own dehydration. The guides say this part of the trail once connected inland Axumite cities to Red Sea ports like Agilis. The Big Port. The famous one, you've heard of it, where Roman, Indian, and Arabian merchants swirled together in a chaotic soup of languages and smells. From here they say you could move salt, obsidian, live animals, even people. Mainstream historians note that the ascent Uarion was one of several spoke routes feeding into the wheel of trade. But some fringe archaeologists believe this particular slope, narrow, brutal, and weirdly aligned, was sacred, part of ritual pilgrimages tied to the moon cycle. Historians still argue whether that was spiritual marketing or a practical repurposing of sacred geography. You pause beside a low stone wall, its top crusted with lichen and faded chalk markings. Someone's carved a spiral into one of the rocks. You trace it with your finger, feeling slightly dizzy. Spiral patterns show up everywhere out here on pottery and textiles, even in the layout of burial sites. Coincidence? Cultural preference? Or something else? The climb gets steeper. You hunch forward, hands on thighs, breathing like a bellows. Abdullah says, "You're near the Gate of Dust," which sounds like a death metal band, but is actually just a narrow pass between two outcrops. Wind funnels through it in violent bursts. Sand pelts your neck like it's auditioning for revenge. You make it through, but not without your scarf nearly being stolen by the wind. You press on, vision blurry, calves shaking. And then suddenly, the slope levels. You stand on a flat stretch of high plateau, the trail widening and curving toward a ridge of black stone. You stop here. So does everyone else. Not because you're done walking. Oh no, you're not that lucky. But because you've reached the threshold. There, cut into the rock ahead, is a shallow relief carving. A procession of figures, human, animal, hybrid. Some hold staffs. One holds a long object that could be a scroll, or a snake. Another rides something that might be a camel or might be an exceptionally lumpy horse. It's stylized, worn, but undeniably ancient. Abdullah taps the figures. "Greeting wall," he says. "They see who comes. They send word ahead." You're not sure if he means that literally or metaphorically. You nod solemnly either way. The fringe fact: some ancient travelers believed these carved guardians were watchers, not just stone images, but entities with a kind of memory. They recorded who passed. If you disrespected the trail, they remembered. If you gave offerings or walked with care, they whispered your name forward to the next shelter. Historians still argue whether that's superstition or a kind of proto-surveillance system encoded into oral tradition. You decide to drop a small charm into a crevice just in case. It's the twist of thread from your pack strap. Nothing fancy, but it's been with you this whole time. Feels right. The caravan continues, and the plateau shifts again. Now the land is studded with flat-top boulders, some etched with symbols, others hosting small piles of burnt offerings, charred herbs, ash, occasionally a fruit pit or a piece of bone. This was a rest stop, yes, but also a ritual zone. You sit beside a fire ring. Someone shares a story about a merchant who once bribed a local deity with honey to get fair winds across the mountains. Another says, no, it was goat milk, not honey. Someone else claims it was actually a bowl of fermented barley, and the deity just wanted a drink. Historians still argue whether these oral legends carry real trade data, or if they read just bedtime stories for the road-weary. Either way, you like the image. A tired god sipping barley beer, nodding approval, waving caravans through like a slightly tipsy traffic cop. You chew a strip of dried squash, surprisingly sweet, and sip what's left of your water. The final leg of today's journey looms. A zigzag trail descending into a rocky canyon. The last stop before the crossing to your next destination, likely a settlement, maybe a small trade hub. The descent is brutal. Not steep, but endless. Every step jangles your knees. Your pack feels like a smugly indifferent toddler. And yet, there's something energizing about going down after so much up. Like you've earned this. like gravity owes you. You pass a collapsed shelter, a collection of stones that once formed a semi-permanent way station. Roofs long gone, but someone has carved a symbol on one wall, a fish, strangely detailed. In the middle of the desert, that feels like a joke, till you remember millennia ago. Parts of this land were wetter. Seasonal lakes formed. Fish were caught, traded, worshipped even. Mainstream consensus notes a surprising number of fish bones at inland sites, but fringe theorists believe they had totems shaped like fish to summon rainfall. Historians still argue whether those were metaphors or desperate ecological bargaining chips. At the bottom of the canyon, you find another marker, this one newer, probably no more than 400 years old. A simple pile of stones topped with a fragment of carved wood, a signpost, splintered but legible. The Giaz characters read shelter, water, one rest away, one rest. That's all. You can make that. As the light fades, the caravan sets camp in the lee of the canyon. The air is warmer here, still. You roll out your mat, press your back against a warm rock, and exhale for what feels like the first time in days. Dinner is humble stewed lentils and a pinch of dried pepper. You spoon it up slowly, savoring every bite. Someone plays a single-stringed lyre. The sound is high and strange and beautiful. Before bed, you burn the frankincense you took earlier. The smoke curls upward, a thin, slow ribbon disappearing into the stars. The scent is soothing, familiar, sacred. You lie down with your head on your bundled cloak, the stars above you sharper than ever. You think of the procession on the stone, of the watching spirits, of fish in the desert, of honey for gods, of carved spirals and worn sandals. You think maybe you're not just walking to a place, you're walking into a story. Sleep came soft but brief. By now, your body has learned to sleep like a cat, deeply but lightly, always half aware of the wind's tone or a camel's grunt. Morning unfolds slow and gray. The sun is still hiding somewhere behind the canyon wall, so you shiver into your sandals, wrap your scarf twice, stretch under the weight of stars not yet dismissed. Today is different. You feel it before anyone speaks. The caravan is quieter than usual, though not tense. Just respectful. Focused. You catch it in how the guides cinch their robes tighter, how they test the cinches on the pack animals twice, maybe 3 times. Something is ahead. Something final. You don't ask. You've learned by now that the desert gives answers only after you've walked far enough. As you climb out of the canyon, your boots kick up ash-colored dust. It swirls in lazy spirals and hangs for a moment in the chilled air before vanishing. The path ahead is long, flat, and rimmed by low crumbling walls, what may have once been boundaries or fences, or perhaps just rockfall that nature stacked with suspicious symmetry. And then, cresting a low hill, you see it, a ruin. It's not large, but unmistakably intentional. Pillars 3 still upright, 1 toppled. Stone blocks forming the ghost of walls. A central slab, flat and raised, and you freeze, caught between awe and the need to pee which. After 3 sips of morning tea is reaching a point of rebellion, you approach slowly, careful not to step where others don't. The group fans out like respectful ants. No one speaks above a whisper. This was likely a trade shrine. That's the best guess. Mainstream historians recognize several such roadside temples along ancient Ethiopian routes, used for rest, offering, and perhaps negotiation. This one, it's less studied. Too remote, too ruined. But it matches the pattern. At the center, near the slab, you notice a small depression filled with pebbles, tiny stones, smooth black, white, red. You pick one up. It's warm, though the air is cool. There's no sun on it, no explanation. Someone whispers, "It's a wishing pit." A what? You glance over. Travelers leave stones, the guide says. If the spirits approve, the stone stays. If not, the wind removes it. You smirk. So if my stone disappears tomorrow, I'm doomed. He shrugs. Or it's just windy. Either way, worth the risk. You drop your pebble in. Red one. Feels bold. Feels hopeful. Nearby, someone lights a shallow oil lamp and sets it into a carved niche. The flickering flame casts dancing shadows across the stone floor, and for a second, The ruin seems less ruined, like it might rebuild itself if you blink slowly enough. Here's your quirky tidbit for the day. Some of these trade shrines doubled as legal stations. Disputes between merchants could be settled here with divine witnesses implied. The losing party had to leave behind a token, sometimes a piece of jewelry, other times a lock of hair, or oddly enough, a handful of animal dung. Guess which one historians argue about the most? Yep, that last one. One traveler opens a pouch and sprinkles dried herbs into the air. It smells sharp, cleansing something between time and regret. A few of the elders bow to war at the rising sun, which is now slanting amber rays across the crumbling columns. A child ties a bit of blue ribbon to a thorn bush just outside the ruin's edge. You swear you've seen that same ribbon before, or one just like it, tied somewhere miles back. Maybe you're walking in a circle of stories. The caravan moves on. No fanfare. No drumroll. Just the rhythmic crunch of sand and stone and the ever-present squeak of leather straps. You follow. Round midday, the trail descends gently, and something on the wind changes. Moisture, faint but real. The earth here smells different, richer. You begin to spot more green. A tuft of grass, a stubborn cactus, then shrubs, then a tree with yellow flowers exploding like tiny suns. The guides grin. One waves a hand toward the valley below. There, he says, the edge. You follow his gaze, and your breath catches. Below, not far now, lies the edge of a settlement. Not sprawling or grand, but very much alive. You can make out the flicker of smoke from cook fires, the shine of a river or wide stream cutting through a patch of cultivated green, roofs, round and low, brown and red and gold in the afternoon light, people, tiny as ants, but moving, walking, living. This is a market stop, a hub, a resting place. You've made it. Your legs don't exactly break into a sprint, but your feet feel lighter, as if the stones have been pulled from your sandals by invisible hands. The final stretch is blurry with relief. There is a moment, just one, when you pass under a stone arch and realize the same route you've followed for days is etched into the memories of hundreds of travelers before you, maybe thousands after. Inside the settlement, sound returns. It's the buzz of voices, laughter, the slap of clay against stone. Someone pounds grain in a rhythm that sounds suspiciously like a chant. You drop your pack at a shaded corner and sit. Actually sit. Not pause on a rock, sit full, seated still. Someone offers you a wooden bowl of fermented milk. You drink it too quickly. It tastes like yogurt at an existential crisis. You love it. And as you lean back, the weight of the journey behind you and the soft rustle of trade tents ahead, you realize this was never just about reaching a place. It was about carrying stories, exchanging silence for understanding, walking not just through dust, but through time. Think of the resin bead, the marker stone, the charm tied to your wrist, the carved fish in the canyon wall, the spiral in the rock. You are somehow heavier and lighter at once. You think maybe the ancient Ethiopians didn't pack for the desert. Maybe they packed for the return. Now let's slow everything down. The sun's long gone now.
The last warmth has faded from the stones.
You're lying on a mat beneath a roof of reeds and stars. The air is soft, cool, but kind. A breeze plays with the hem of your cloak. Somewhere nearby, a flute whispers a lullaby older than words. The fire's down to embers, glowing, breathing. You watch it dim, the red light pulsing slower and slower until it barely flickers. Around you, others are already asleep. Their breathing is gentle, like waves lapping at the shore of memory. You feel their calm, you borrow it, you keep it. Your body tired, triumphant, sinks deeper into the mat. Your muscles, those brave little cords, finally unclench. Your breath evens out, slow and quiet. You think about the stones under your feet, about the spirits watching from rock carvings and crooked trees, about the silence between footsteps, filled with wind and ghosts and maybe even peace. Let it all blur now. The trail, the trade goods, the strange tastes, and stranger stories. Let the road stretch far behind you, winding gently out of view. You've traveled well. You've carried things that mattered. And now you rest.